Hi guys, and welcome back to another true crime and makeup time video. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single week. So if you enjoy these videos, guys. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single week. So if you haven't already, join the fam and hit that subscribe button. It would mean so much to me. So today's case, horrific. It's really tragic and it didn't need to take place at all. But these horrible crimes take place because of sick individuals. And we are going to be talking about a sick individual today. Imagine being in a foreign country, far away from your home, your friends, your family. You're excited to be there, have new experiences, until one day someone takes that from you. We're talking about the tragic case of Yingying Zhang. Let's get into it. I read up on this case years ago and I remember just feeling so sick by the entire thing. So let's talk about Yingying Zhang and who she was. So Yingying was born on December 21st, 1990 in Nanping, China. Nanping is a small city in southeast China and she lived with her parents Ronggao and Li Feng, and she also had a brother called Zheng Yang in a small mountaintop home. Her father was a truck driver and her mom was a homemaker and she wasn't in the best health. Yingying was extremely intelligent and she graduated from Sun Yat-sen University in China at the top of her class. She was the first in her family to graduate from college. In 2017, she decided to make a change and moved to the US after she received a scholarship from the University of Illinois. Her plan was to attend the university for 1 year, further her education, and conduct her research on crop productivity and photosynthesis. And after this, she was hoping to get a doctorate degree and then move back to China to be a professor. Yingying really had her life planned out. She knew where she wanted to be in life and what she wanted to achieve. She was engaged to her fiancé. His name was Xiaolin Hao, and she planned to marry him in October of 2017 when she was going to be returning to China from Illinois. She was described as a happy, genuinely kind person who had a kind of innocence to her. She was a very trusting person. She cared for her family, her parents. She was a very dutiful daughter and she strived for academic excellence, not only for herself, but for her family. She wanted to give them a better life and she would send money back home when she was studying as she found a side job working as a researcher in the Chinese Academy of Sciences. She was very excited to go to the US. She was excited for all the new experiences she was going to have. And she wrote in her diary, "I told mom that there are both Americans and Chinese here, all extremely nice." Her mother was actually very nervous about Yingying traveling to the US alone for her studies, but she said that she just had to let her daughter do what she wanted for school, for her education. But she never knew at the time that this decision would be one her entire family would come to regret. In April of 2017, Yingying made the move from China to Champaign, Illinois to begin her studies. In April of 2017, Yingying made her move from China to Champaign, Illinois, and moved into an apartment on the campus of the University of Illinois. She initially lived alone in this apartment for the first couple of months, but then she decided it was probably better to look for a roommate. It was going to be cheaper and she wouldn't be living alone. It was now June 2017 and it was a good time to look for a new apartment, a new roommate, as it's the summertime. So some students are moving back home, some students gone for summer vacation, and some students have just finished class entirely. So there are some apartments popping up that she could look at. So on 9th June 2017, Yingying had made some plans to view an apartment at an apartment complex, and she was supposed to meet a property manager, and hopefully if she liked this apartment, she would sign the lease. During this time, there weren't many people at the campus, so Yingying, she worked a little bit in the morning and then she told her professor that she was going to go view this apartment, hopefully sign this lease. So she's not going to be back till a little bit later. It might take some time, but she'll return when she's done. Her plan was to meet this man named Ron Stone. He was the manager for One North Apartments and she hoped to live in this apartment complex. So at around 12:30 p.m., Yingying leaves, and she didn't drive, so she took the bus everywhere she went. I believe she had to take a couple of buses to get to this apartment complex. So at 1:39 p.m., she texted the manager of the apartment, Brendt, and she tells him that she had a little bit of trouble with buses and she would arrive by 2:10 p.m. He responds to her. He's like, no worries, I'll see you then. So as she arrives at the stop, she's supposed to change onto the second bus. It's about 1:52 p.m. and she gets off the first bus. And as she does so, she sees the second bus arrive. But she's on the opposite side of the road, not close to the bus stop. So she runs and she tries to chase after the bus, hoping it will stop for her, but it didn't stop. So Yingying decides to walk to the next bus stop, which is at Clark and Goodwin Avenue, to wait for the next bus. So 2:10 p.m. arrives and Rontrez is still waiting for Yingying to arrive. He calls her to check in on her, but she doesn't respond. Hours go by and Yingying hasn't returned as promised. Now people are starting to get worried about her, and she actually had plans to meet with her friends on campus at 7 p.m. When she doesn't show, her professor, Jeffrey Braun, is notified about Yingying's unusual absence, and he instructed her friends to call the police. So at 9:24 p.m., they reported Yingying missing to the University of Illinois campus police. They looked in her dorm room and they found cash, her passports, travel documents. So they assumed that she had not left, she was not trying to leave, and she was meant to actually come back home. Yingying's family were devastated by her disappearance, and the police really worked hard over the next few days to try and get some answers, but they had no luck. So the FBI was called in to help. Where was she? 10 days after she went missing, her father, Rongao, her aunt, and her fiancé, Xiaolin, arrived in Champaign to search for her. On June 19th, the University of Illinois, together with the Champaign County Crime Stoppers, announced a reward of $40,000 for information leading to the arrest of the people responsible for the apparent kidnapping of Yingying. This was the largest reward offered in the history of the Crime Stoppers organization, and then it was increased to $50,000. Yingying's family promised they were not going to leave the US until they had answers, until they found Yingying, and then later on, her mother and her brother arrived in Champaign. Then a tip came in to the police about people seeing a woman who matched Yingying's description in Salem, Illinois, the same day she went missing. So the FBI did investigate these tips, however, it was not Yingying. Now, the University of Illinois was a big campus. It had extensive security footage. The police used all of this footage to track Yingying's movements the day she disappeared. Yingying was captured on this footage just a few blocks from where she missed that bus, and this was on North Goodwin Avenue and West Clark Street. And on the surveillance at 1:59 p.m., as she's sitting there, a dark colored car is seen sort of circling the block. This same car then pulls up alongside where Yingying is waiting. She is seen talking to the driver, and then a minute later at 2 p.m., she gets into the vehicle. The FBI couldn't make out the license plate, but they found out that the car was a black Saturn Astra. It turns out that this particular model of car was only made for a short period of time, so there were only 18 of them in the area. But once this car drove out of the campus grounds, it made it harder to track because of less cameras around. Now, I believe the people doing the investigation or maybe assisting in the investigation were actually the University of Illinois campus police. And one police officer from there, he had been scouring over CCTV footage for hours, right? And he was the one who noticed, okay, that the car that picked up Yingying had a hubcap that was broken, and it also had a sunroof, which when you look at the footage, it's really hard to make that out. So this police officer had a great eye. Meanwhile, campus police received a report from a girl named Emily. Emily said that on June 9th, the same day that Yingying disappeared, a man driving a black car approached her, claiming to be an undercover cop, and he was offering her a ride. Emily refused this offer from this man, and he drove off. And this then led to the theory Perhaps Yingying was kidnapped. So then, after checking all the black Saturns in the area, the 18 Saturns, only one had a sunroof. The car belonged to a man named Brendt Christensen, and he graduated from the University of Illinois in May 2017 with a doctorate in physics. Emily was then shown a photo lineup of possible suspects, and she immediately pointed out Brendt as the man who tried to lure her into his car, posing as an undercover cop. Brendt was known around campus. He was a grad student from the physics department who had become a teaching assistant, and he was known to be generally quiet and he kept to himself. Brendt was born on 30th June 1989, and he was 29 years old. He was married to a woman named Michelle Zortman, but they were in an open relationship because he also had a girlfriend named Tara. So police show up to his apartment where they found a 2008 black Saturn Astra sitting in the driveway. They also noticed that his car had the same damage to the front hubcap as the car that was seen in the CCTV footage. So police brought him in for questioning and asked him where he was on June 9th. He told police that on that day, Friday, June 9th, his wife had been away for the weekend and he was most likely at home playing video games and looking for jobs online. The police then tell him that they have footage of him picking up a girl in his car. At that point, Brent was like, oh, and began shaking. He then says, oh, maybe I got my days mixed up. Yeah. Actually, I was driving around that day. On 15th June, a search warrant was issued for his car. And when they searched his car, police found nothing but a meticulously cleaned passenger side door. Now, compared to the rest of his car, the passenger side door was like scrubbed down, so clean, perfect, which made police believe that this had been recently cleaned to destroy evidence. That same day, Brett was once again questioned, and now he says, oh yeah, I did pick up a girl that day, but it was not Yingying. He says he gave this girl a lift because she was extremely stressed out and she spoke broken English. He said she wanted a lift just a few blocks north of where they were. So he gave her a lift, but as they were driving, she freaked out when he took a wrong turn and she got out of the car and then she left and then he doesn't know where she went after that. At this point, his wife, Michelle, was at home. So with her consent, they seized Brent's cell phones and computers, and they were now watching Brent's every move. They then obtained a search warrant for Brent's apartment. They found blood on several of the walls, 3 stains found on his mattress, and luminol revealed there was a further stain on a baseball bat. All of this evidence was then sent into forensics for testing. So remember, he had a wife, Michelle, but then he also had a girlfriend named Tara. So at this time, the police approach his girlfriend, Tara, and they ask, would you be, willing to assist in this investigation to find Yingying? Would you be willing to wear a wire? We want you to talk to Brent, find out what happened to Yingying, and record this conversation. Tara agreed. Then, when they searched Brent's phone, we already knew they were going to find some disturbing shit, but they found visits to a website called FetLife and a forum called Abduction 101. FetLife is an online platform for people who are into BDSM and other sexual fetishes. The Abduction 101 forum is a fantasy and role-playing board. Pretend. But Brent was lurking on the forum, taking notes, preparing for a real-life victim. On 29th June 2017, Brent's girlfriend Tara was fitted with a wire. They were going to be attending a memorial walk for Yingying, and this was when Tara would question him. What Brent would tell Tara would shake her to her core. And this footage is one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard. It's not really what he says, it's more of the entire vibe of the whole thing, the way he speaks about it. And then on the recording, as they're talking in the midst of Brent reliving the details, you can hear Tara's heart pounding. So I'm going to read you some of what he says. So he says, "It's so weird. All these people here tonight, they want her home safe. They have no idea what happened. Nobody knows what happened except me." He goes on to tell Tara that he had been killing since he was 19 years old and that Yingying was his 13th victim. He says Yingying was resilient, truly resilient, that he tried to, this is horrific, that he tried to choke her to death, but she just wouldn't die. He even tried to step on her neck, and it was almost supernatural how she just didn't give up and die. And I guess Tara's like nervous. So she says, "Oh, we can, stop talking about it if you want to." And he goes, "No, I want to talk about it. I want to tell someone." That he's been wanting to talk about this. And he bragged that Ted Bundy wasn't even as good as a killer as he was. Later that night, Brendt admits to kidnapping and murdering Yingying. He said that he tied her hands once he got her into his apartment. He took her into his bedroom where he raped her. He goes on to say he cut off her clothes and started doing stuff to her, but he got bored. He said that's when he took her into his bathroom. He placed her in the bathtub and then began beating her with his baseball bat. That he split her head open when he hit her head with the baseball bat as hard as he could. He stabbed her and then decapitated her. He wanted to make sure she was dead. He then cleaned his apartment, got rid of her belongings and her remains. He then told Tara that Yingying would never be found. She was gone forever. Yingying's blood was confirmed to have been found on Brent's mattress, the floor, and the walls of his bedroom. But his bathroom was spotless because he hired professional maintenance cleaners to come and replace the grout and the tub. But luckily, Yingying's DNA was also found on Brent's baseball bat. On 30th June 2017, Brendt Christensen was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of Yingying Zhang and was denied bail. His trial began in June 2019, and this trial was not taking place to prove that Brendt killed Yingying. It was to ensure that Brendt didn't receive the death penalty. The defense wanted to outline how many factors led to Brendt's actions that day, but the prosecution called for the death penalty, which Yingying's family supported. The prosecution's stance was that Brendt planned the entire act. He was a smart man, a high achiever, and he was obsessed with serial killers like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. That his lurking on the website FetLife, the fact that he attempted to kidnap one victim earlier that day, being Emily, and the most damning recorded confession proving him to be a monster who was out looking for a victim that day. On the website FetLife, there was an interaction that he had with another woman, and they were talking about their abduction fantasy. So he told this woman that he would kidnap her, bind her, gag her, put her into a large duffel bag into the trunk of his car, and then he would rape her. The court found that on 6th June 2017, 3 days before Yingying was murdered, Brendt had an order from Amazon delivered to his apartment. He ordered a 6-foot long, 2-foot wide, large green duffel bag. What do you think he ordered that for? The prosecution believed that it was this large green duffel bag that Brendt used to carry Yingying up to his apartment without being seen. The defense, however, claimed that Brendt did not deserve the death penalty, that his life at the time was falling apart. His wife wanted an open relationship. She was seeing another man and she wanted a divorce. That Brendt was drinking heavily and mixing it with prescription drugs. That Brendt felt like a failure. That he had tried to get help for his homicidal fantasies. When he met his girlfriend Tara, it was she that introduced him to the world of BDSM, to the website FetLife. On this basis is what the defense urged the jury to spare Brendt's life. Which to me is like, what? I mean, I get people have problems, but do they commit such horrific crimes? Okay, let's recap. lured an innocent woman into his car pretending to be a cop, someone she would have trusted, bound her, stuffed her into a duffel bag, took her up to his apartment, beat her, raped her, split her head open, stabbed her, decapitated her. Am I supposed to feel sorry for him because his wife was leaving and he was struggling a bit? What? Keep in mind that Yingying's family had begged Brendt to let them know where her remains were. They wanted to bring her back to China. He refused. Yingying's mother said she would never see her daughter in a wedding dress. She would never meet her grandkids. That family didn't know how to move on without Yingying. The federal jury condemned Brendt in a 4-page document stating that his crime was carefully premeditated over an extended period of time in an especially heinous, cruel, or depraved manner, in that it involved torture or serious physical abuse to the victim. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict. In November 2018, Brendt finally admitted that he placed Yingying's dismembered remains into 3 separate garbage bags and threw them in dumpsters outside of his apartment. He then also said that he disposed of her things strategically over the next few days in random dumpsters. The areas outside Brent's apartment were emptied and taken to landfill, and at the point in which he admitted this, her remains would have been covered by at least 30 feet of landfill. In a really creepy fact, when Yingying went missing and her father, her fiance, and her aunt had come down to look for her, they were apparently on the same street as Brent's apartment somehow. And during a random search of the street, the auntie, she pointed at a few dumpsters not far away. And she stated, "I really want to fumble around in that, but I'm afraid we aren't allowed to." Yingying's remains have never been found. Can you imagine if she had searched in those dumpsters? On 24th June 2019, Brendt was found guilty of 1 count of kidnapping resulting in death and 2 counts of making false statements to agents of the FBI. On July 18th, 2019, Brendt was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When this verdict was read out in court, Brendt lowered his head, looked at his mother, and smiled at her when he realized his life was going to be spared. Brendt's claims of Yingying being his 13th victim and he was a serial killer since the age of 19 years old, none of those claims were ever confirmed. No evidence was found that Brendt had ever killed before. This case shocked families in China, where many families send their children to study in the US. In 2018, there were more than 300,000 Chinese students in the country. On October 11th, 2018, a memorial garden was dedicated to Yingying Zhang at the corner of North Goodwin Avenue and West Clark Street, where she was picked up. Since her remains were never found, a box containing her clothes was buried. On August 19th, 2019, her parents created the Yingying Fund. The fund would be used to support international students in crisis as well as their families. This case is honestly horrific, one that I always think about. The way that Brendt is excitedly telling Tara about what he did to Yingying, about how no one would find her, just the pure evilness in his voice, the way his voice lights up, the way he sounds giddy talking about an innocent woman. Tara was terrified and genuinely hoping to find Yingying. Can you imagine how she felt knowing the man she had been intimate with committed a crime like this? That the fetishes and fantasies that she may have introduced him to became a reality for him. Without her help, though, maybe Brendt would have never been convicted. Yingying was so trusting. She genuinely believed that Brendt was offering her a ride so that she wouldn't be late. This poor woman, the torture she endured, the fear she would have had being so far away from her friends, her family, not knowing what this man was going to do to her, and then the most horrific, gruesome death. We talk about these types of cases all the time, and I still find them unbelievable. What are your thoughts, guys? Let me know down in the comments below. I love to read your comments. Thank you so much for all your support, and I will see you in next week's video. Besitos. Bye.